Hey guys, it's Alyssa, the hopeless romantic redhead.
And I'm Danielle, the whodunit detective.
And welcome to Main Character Syndrome. If you feel like you are the main character in your life, you are in the right place. We are continuing our deep dive into Tower of Dawn, Book 6 of the Throne of Glass series. Danielle, I can't believe we're on Book 6.
Yeah, and this book, I am really liking it. And right now we're getting into a lot of fun stuff in the book. And we have already started our deep dive into Tower of Dawn. So today's episode, we're going into chapters 18 to 34. So if you haven't read up to chapter 34, finish reading and catch up and then jump back into this episode. But we will be giving spoilers from chapters 1, obviously, all the way through chapter 34 today.
I feel
And
like it
then
goes without
obviously,
saying, but you have been warned again.
yes, and obviously we'll be talking about the other books as well. So if you haven't read up to read up through Empire of Storms and you haven't read through chapter 34 today, now you're warned.
Same with Assassin's Blade, guys, because we're going to be connecting some of the dots. So if you haven't read Assassin's Blade, go read it. It's so good.
Yeah, and I mean that these people like would not make sense to you. Like who the heck would Yrene be to you? But we
Exactly.
already know her.
We already know her from Assassin's Blade, so if you haven't read it, again, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just a question. Okay. Jumping into chapter 18. So we left off with Chaol can basically feel his toes after Yrene had a little session with him. So he's starting to, it's the healing process has started to kind of work. He and Nesryn have kind of been on the rocks a little bit. She's been hanging out with this prince called Sartak, and she's kind of hanging out with him a little bit more. So Nesryn just went to go see her family, and her family's like, "Where's Sartak? Like,
Yeah.
where's the young man that you were with?" And she's like, "Who, Kale?" They're like, "No, Sartak." So
The prince.
there's something going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 18, Hussar, which is one of the princesses, she asks Yrene to chat with her, and they're supposed to be kind of friends, but she's a little less friendly here. She says she needs her to get close to Chaol. Nobody has seen Aelin or Dorian, and she needs Yrene to find out where Aelin is because she's not in Terrasen. This is about the time where the tandem read would be super helpful because you would have just found out that no, Aelin is not in Terrasen because she wasn't allowed in Terrasen.
Yeah.
So, and then Hussar is like, it's less of a request and more of a veiled threat because Hussar can make it impossible for Yrene to go back to Otterlin, which she wanted to do to help with the war efforts.
Yeah, so she's basically asking Yrene to be a spy for her. And if you remember, it's the servants there that work for them typically that they have be their spies. And so I felt like this had like a lot of symbolism in it, like almost like Hussar doesn't really appreciate Irene's friendship. That's kind of how I took it, because obviously I wouldn't ask any of my friends to do something they were uncomfortable with, like become one of my spies. So
Nor threaten you to not be able to go back home.
yeah, I'd be like, oh, sorry, I'm gonna make your life a living hell if you don't do this.
Exactly.
So we're starting to see Hussar's true colors. In chapter 19, Chaol is practicing moving his toes, and he decides he's not going to tell Nesryn that he can even move them. But his reasoning is that he doesn't want to get her hopes up. But obviously, that's just a big deal. And I feel like that's something that you share with a partner or someone that you supposedly have feelings for. And then after this, he finally kisses her again. And he doesn't have any kind of spark from it. And so, in my opinion, it's very obvious in this chapter that they're definitely no longer a love interest. That's just kind of flaking, like it's just falling apart. And then in kind of the book, we get to a spot where there's a ceremony coming up to honor the sea goddess, and that begins the next day. And Yrene is now late to her meeting with Chaol. Chaol then decides to ride a horse to the Torre, and there he runs into Euphisa, the High Healer. And we learn that Yrene is in bed because she's drained and she's been sleeping for basically a day and a half now. And then she finally meets back up with Chaol on horseback and she does some exercises again with him.
Which, like, fair. If you basically drain yourself to heal someone, a day and a half is valid.
Yeah.
Chapter 20, the two basically travel to see a man that Irene has been healing. So Chaol gets to kind of see her nurturing side. And then Irene kind of gives them a little tour of the city, and they start to really bond in this chapter. And Irene and Kale kind of share like their hopes for the future. Irene wants to go back. Kale kind of opens up a little bit more, and Kale doesn't open up to really anybody.
Mm-mm.
That
No,
was a
so
really
that
cute chapter.
yeah, it was a big deal. And there's definitely like some type of at least friendship that we can sense forming. Like they're both kind of down their walls that they have built against each other. So in chapter 21, everyone kind of comes together for dinner as usual. And the Princess Hussar moves into the room and she's like, Nesryn, move. You're not sitting next to Chaol. And she puts Yrene then next to Chaol, obviously, like to try and stir things up, but obviously Irene's now her spy, technically. And then she's like fitted Yrene in this beautiful, stunning dress, and she's drawing all the eyes of the men in the room, including the other princes. Now, the king decides not to come. He's not in attendance. And because of this, they kind of turn this dinner into a giant party with exotic dancers and with drugs. And it's basically a brothel, and they pull in all of these couches, and the dancers are just dancing around the room, and everyone's getting high. Sartak and Nesrin then slip away and they go to a chair on the far side of the room next to the window so that they don't get high. And then Caution steps to a couch and he's about to motion for Yrene to come join him. And Chaol kind of sees this and knows that that would make her uncomfortable. So he tells her to go with him on the far side of the room to keep her away from Caution. Argan is enjoying himself and he has servant courtiers all over him. And it's pointed out that he does have a wife who lives in the countryside, but according to their culture, this is not seen as cheating because they're servants. And I just thought this was kind of weird. I was like, ugh, Argan, give
Yeah,
me the
it's
ick.
definitely a different world.
Yeah, it's a different world. And I think that this just is supposed to give you the ick where you're like, Argan, you're gross, you're
And
slimy.
also, does the wife know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
It may
know.
not be cheating to you, but does your
Yeah,
wife know?
right? So then Irene and Kale are in their little corner and they're both getting a little toasted also from the smoke around them and it's kind of loosening them up. And then Irene says that Hussar told her Aelin is still missing and she knows where their enemies' armies are. And they're just basically all over the country. And then she basically tells him that she was threatened by Hussar to find out where Aelin is. And Chaol feels really bad about this. So sexual tension kind of starts to bubble between them and they have like a flirtation going. And then Yrene says that the princess thinks that Chaol is potentially behind the attack on the healers to try to get them to ally with Aelin and Dorian. But Irene's like, I don't believe that you would do something like that. I'm starting to get to know you better, and that's not you. And then he tells her that Aelin could be found at Skulls Bay, thinking that she would never go there. And he's like, okay, well, just tell Hussar that she's in Skulls Bay. I want to help you out. But we know that's exactly where she went.
This is where it's kind of fun to not do the tandem read because we know that's exactly where Elin went.
Yeah, you read that and you're like, oh crap, Kale, you really screwed up. Like
Hell, you moron.
he's like, oh, Aylin's got big beef with the pirate Lord Ralph, so she would never go there. And she did. So then Irene goes to leave, and I must say that Caution is livid because of Chaol, and he kind of sees this thing going on between them in this flirtation. And then she asks Hussar for an escort home, and she's like, hey, Aylin's at Skulls Bay, and she also thinks that it's a lie. Kale and Nesrin then go back to their own suite, and she says that she doesn't think that she belongs there anymore in the castle, and that she wants to go with Sartak to figure out if the Volk have been there a while. And I must say, Nesrin kind of witnessed this whole thing go on with Kale and Yrene, and so she's kind of seen this chemistry that they have developing now. And she's like, I just, I gotta dip. This is not gonna look good for me.
Well,
And I want to
honestly,
actually do some work.
what did he expect? Nesryn watched the whole thing.
Yeah. So then she wants to go with Sartak, and see if he's on their side and to kind of get more information from him. And Chaol just like he's right through this, and he feels so guilty about his feelings towards Yrene and about how he behaved at the party.
As he should.
Yeah.
I mean, he's technically at this point still involved with Nesryn, and they haven't broken it off yet.
Yeah.
Yes, Nesryn is also kind of flirty with Sartak, but Chaol's the only one that's acted on it.
Yeah. Like it was like very like kind of like he's like caressing her or whatnot. I don't know. It
Yeah,
was
you don't need to touch you don't need to kiss to cheat. Like that to me is cheating 100%.
yeah. And so she's like kind of like I'm done, but not officially.
Yeah. She's definitely kind of written him off at this point. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I see what's going on.
Yeah. She's like, this is happening again.
Yup. So then chapter 22. Well, basically, Chaol feels really guilty, and he and Nesryn just kind of stay up all night talking. And Yrene, the next day, goes to see Chaol a little earlier than planned and catches him in bed with Nesryn. Mind you, they just fell asleep. They didn't really do anything. So Nesryn thinks nothing of it and just leaves. And then Chaol is shaken and tries to explain. And Yrene is really hurt, but she kind of acts like nothing happened, or not nothing happened, but she's very nonchalant, like it's not her business. And then they kind of change the subject, and then Chaol sees the scroll that Yrene has and kind of freaks out because it's full of word marks. And he makes her hide it in his room in one of his boots, and that's kind of important for later.
Yeah, we'll get into that the next episode. Chapter 23, he can't remember. They're kind of talking and like looking at the scroll kind of, and he realizes that he can't remember what happened to the two other Volg kings. So we have Erewhon, but Erewhon had two brothers, and we don't really know what happened to them. And so Yrene asks him who gave him the scar on his face because now they're doing this healing and they're just talking. And his answer is basically, yeah, I deserved it, which fair.
He did.
He
We
did.
know it was Aelin who gave him that scar, and yeah, he
Yeah.
kind of deserved it.
As like you killed my best friend Nehemia, you got her killed, we'll
Hmm.
say. So then Irene's healing him, and this healing kind of, while she's healing him, she's going into this darkness inside of him. And this darkness that she's in now is one of Chaol's memories. And it's a memory of his father roughly throwing him out when he was kind of abdicating his title to go work at the castle and try to become in the King's Guard. And he had to travel then to Rifthold on his own. And he's kind of thrown out really aggressively, like bashes his face in on the ground. And so guards there are witnessing this at his father's place. And they gave him a horse and a coat and a few supplies before Chaol was kind of banished away. And then his father, as retaliation, then fired and banished all of those guards who helped Chaol and banished all of their families out of the city and into the woods. And some of them died, Chaol learned later on. And he feels so guilty about that. And this is just like a terrible memory. And the darkness is like taking Chaol over, and he's feeling worthless and regretful for all of his bad decisions that he's made. Mind you, this is during the healing. And then all of a sudden, the darkness is kind of gone and wiped away, and his mind starts to get more positive. And he walks towards a woman and her young child in a garden, and it's Yrene and her mother. And now we're inside Irene's memory, and she's teaching Yrene healing with plants. And after this, Chaol becomes conscious again, and he can feel now his entire foot and has sensation in it. And then he regains consciousness and he is looking for Yrene, and Yrene is crying in the garden at the castle, and she's crying from that memory of seeing her mother. Yrene then kind of opens herself up more to Chaol, and she says that her mother was killed, um, in this terrible way. And she says that her mother was healer and she never killed anyone until the day that she died. And her mother killed a soldier when they came to get them. So she could give Yrene more time to run away, and Yrene ran into the woods and then saw the guards burn her mother alive. Then Yrene decided to travel by herself at 11 years old for 2 weeks to go to her cousin's place for safety. And then she tells him about after that, traveling to Inish to work at this bar. And Yrene says that she knows who gave Chaol the wound on his back. And we're like, ooh, when first she said, I know who gave you the wound. And I was like, oh, she knows about Aelin slashing his face. But actually, it was about the wound on his back. And she was like, the old king gave you that wound, and he was possessed by the old king. So she now knows all of this just by like going into this darkness. And she said that the darkness showed her his memories and the king's memories. Yrene says what happened to the guards wasn't his fault, meaning the ones that were banished and the ones that died. And he asks her to eat with him, and she says yes. And remember, in prior times where Chaol asked her, she was like, no.
Hmm.
So, change of
Yeah.
heart.
They're both having this heart to heart. And also, it's interesting how Sarah J. Maas writes this because she could have easily seen images of Aelin and that would have connected the dots, but they don't do that. And there is a
Yeah.
specific reason because you'll find out at the end. But it's really interesting to see how she wrote which memories that she gets to see from Chaol.
Mm-hmm.
It also shows him as a human, right? His dad was awful.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah. Poor, poor Kale, poor baby Kale.
Mm-hmm.
All right, chapter 24. So, Nesryn can definitely tell that Kale has some feelings for Yrene, and she's in the area, and Sartak finds her, and he's like, I don't trust my family. I need to find out what's going on, but I can't trust them to find these answers and tell me about it. So Sartak is going to go to the mountains where the Rukin are living. Those are the Rook Riders, and hunt for answers about what's been going on. And he asks Nesryn to join him. Mind you, he's leaving in an hour. Way to give our girl a heads up. So they'll be gone for 3 weeks, by the way. And Nesryn was kind of hesitant at first, like 3 weeks, like Kale is still healing. And then she agrees and leaves a note for Kale, just telling him that she doesn't hold him to his promises and she won't be held to hers. Basically, they're fine to see other people.
Yeah. That was like a big, we're kind of done. Maybe we'll have another conversation, but I'm gonna go have fun. You have fun too. Like,
Yeah,
piss
you
them
can
off.
definitely tell like things were never really serious between
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. So then in chapter 25, Yrene and Chaol go to the Torre library. And mind you, the Torre we learn is 1500 years old, which is before the last war with Erewhon happened. So very old. It's been through a lot. Nusha, the librarian, takes them to the section with the EOA documents, like she had taken Yrene before. And while Yrene and Chaol are talking, Yrene makes a really good point that I wanted to make note of. And mind you, I haven't finished the book yet. Healers are crucial and a hot commodity to a city. So why did the possessed king of Rifthold have them all killed? And that's a good point. Like, it wasn't obviously, he got rid of magic, but healers like her mother were murdered.
Mhm.
And so obviously the king knew something about healers that we as a reader don't know yet, I would say.
I would say he
Because,
killed specific healers too, because there are different healers that can, like Sorsha, where they used herbs and not magic.
yeah. So Chaol then tells her that the king was possessed and had the magic wielders killed or then stopped all the magic so that the Volg didn't have more powerful hosts. He was like, oh, well, the king was just trying to help everyone, by getting rid of magic. But yeah, like you mentioned, they were also killing specific healers.
Hmm.
So then, change of scenery, Nesryn and Sartak ride far, far away, and they land somewhere with kind of nothing around first. They sit down and they're talking about Aelin and Adian and how his spies know all of the stories about the Bane and how tough they are. And he says he actually also knows about Nesryn and the arrow shot by her to save a shapeshifter's life. He's kind of like, I'm really impressed by you. Like, I know a lot about you, actually. And he says that before he met her, he actually had called her Neith's arrow, which means the goddess of archery. And there's definitely chemistry bubbling up between them.
I'm rooting for them at this point.
Oh my
Like,
gosh, yeah.
screw off, Kale.
Yeah,
Kale who?
basically.
Chapter 26. Kale finally receives Nesrin's letter, and he's not happy, mainly with himself. Shocker. Because he thinks it's his fault because he was flirting with Yrene at dinner. You think? He also feels like he should have treated her better. Again, duh. Of course, he takes it out on our girl Yrene because when she comes to heal him, they fight like cats and dogs.
Yeah.
And Yrene is fuming, so she leaves. And then she goes and sees Hussar, and she finds out that Nesryn left to go to the mountains with Sartak, and then she's like, oh, that's why he's so angry.
Yeah. She's like, yikes, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then Irene, she's still trying to like blow off some steam. So she decides to go to the slums and just start healing people out of kindness. And then after she kind of blows off that steam, she goes back to the castle late. It's like after dark to confront Chaol. And as she's walking through the castle late, she hears footsteps behind her. And this kind of voice in her head starts to speak to her and is telling her to hurry, hurry. And then all of a sudden, her mother's voice is in her head yelling at her to run. And she starts running and she knows that something is chasing her now. And she runs to Chaol's suite and slams the door behind her. And Chaol realizes, he's like, what? And he realizes what's going on. And he's like, move the dresser in front of the door and shut the garden door. And you need to barricade us in. And, once again, he's paraplegic right now. He can't do much. And so this is really like, I'd say uncomfortable for him too, because he's like, I can't protect her like I usually would. So he's just kind of yelling at her to do things. And then the monster starts beating down at the bedroom door. And then all of a sudden, in a really creepy voice, starts speaking Irene's name and says that it wants her. And, while this is happening, Chaol's teaching Yrene how to basically kill the Volg. And then all of a sudden, we hear a crash and shouting from guards. And they open up the door, and it's a servant says that they had saw the broken entry door kind of to the suite. So it's like a little maybe sitting area is how I assume it is, like a door to like a sitting room and then Chaol's bedroom door. So the monster had broken down the first door and hadn't gotten to the bedroom door yet. And so they saw that first broken door and then went to fetch the guards, but the guards don't find anyone else in the suite.
Yeah, this one was really kind of scary because just the creepy way, especially in the audiobook, they're like,
Yeah.
Irene. And I was like, ah, and I
Yeah,
hear that in
it's
my
like,
nightmares.
yeah, it was spooky.
And at this point, too, we hadn't really seen a monster like this, even the Volg.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
And then chapter 28, of course, Prince Caution to the rescue. He comes in after the guards and he's like, I came as soon as I heard. Yrene, what were you doing? Basically, Yrene lies through her teeth and she's like, oh, I was just coming to give Kale some of his medicine when Kale knows fully well that she was on her way to give him a second earful from that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And during like their interaction with Prince Caution, Kale kind of thinks like, oh, he and Dorian would get along really well. Like he would be a great friend for our prince.
Yeah.
Caution basically then stations guards everywhere to keep watch and offers to walk Yrene back to the Torre. Again, he really cares about Yrene and he's not a dick about it, even though like she doesn't return it like his feelings. He still will do everything to keep her safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's kind of like thrown for a loop when Irene's like, no, I'm gonna stay here. So Irene is very scared to spend the night alone in the Torre. So she spends the night in Kale's room. And it's because she feels safer with Kale. And Kale's like, she feels safer with me? Me? And to Caution's dismay. But Kale's like, you can take the bed. Or, well, first he's like, Nesrin's room is empty. And she's like, I know. And she's like, but I don't want to sleep in a room alone. And Kale's like, well, you can take the bed. He won't be sleeping after what occurred. And she like starts to go to the bed and she kind of hesitates. And then Kale's like, they changed the sheets. You're fine. And I'm like, ah, that would be the last thing that I would want to know if I was Irene.
Yeah, right. It's like, ugh.
Then they kind of just sit and chat, and Kale kind of opens up to how he's new to killing people, even though he's captain of the guard, ironically, but he would have killed whatever or whoever was behind that door. And they kind of fall asleep. Well, Nesryn falls asleep. Or not Nesryn, Yrene can't really keep track of all Kale's women.
Yeah, right.
Yrene falls asleep when Kale's kind of confessing this like vulnerable side of him. And then eventually Kale kind of nods off and he wakes up and he's immediately hit with like the guilt slash terror that he felt the previous night, that he wouldn't have been able to protect Yrene like he normally would before he was confined to his chair as a paraplegic. So he finds Hashim, one of the guards, and he has him train him and show him how they fight at Antica. And we remember a guard, Shen, is disabled. He's missing an arm, and he can still fight, and no one laughs at him. They actually help him and help him figure out a way to keep doing what he used to do. And so he just does things a little differently. And Kale's kind of realizing this, like, I can fight, I just need to do it a different way. And so
Hmm.
after that, Kale trains every single day.
Yeah, he starts training with all of like the guards there, and it's kind of bringing back like a lot of like good feelings, adding more positivity into his life, and it's really good, I'd say, for his mental health is what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So then we jump into part two of the book, which is titled Mountains and Seas, and we're definitely changing scenery now. So Nesrin and Sartak in chapter 29 are flying in the mountains, and Sartak says his riders and the Dargon cavalry, they go to war together because they know how to work well together. And the cavalry, I believe, is led by Prince Caution. So he's kind of like mentions that. And I'm pretty sure that's correct, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So Sartak, we're getting to know him more, and he seems more like a normal person. He's the commander of all of the kind of Rook clans or Rook riders, and they go to the Rookin land, the Eyrie, and this is kind of where his group is located, his own like little small clan. And in my mind, when I was picturing this chapter and like this new location, I kind of imagined it almost like a jungle treehouse village. Like, I don't know how you pictured it, Alyssa, but
In the
I was like,
mountains?
yeah, like this like jungle treehouse village in the mountains. I don't know. I was like, seems like a cool place.
Who knows?
And so they land at his little hearth with his closest warriors, and we then meet Borte, who is his hearth family, who's in his hearth family, and she like kind of immediately approves of Nesrin. And she then asks Sartak aloud if Nesrin is an ambassador or his new bride, and then tells Nesrin to watch her back, that girls there would kill for Sartak, and they might just push her off the mountain. So that was pretty funny. And then they start to settle in, and Nesrin sees this man sitting down who doesn't seem to be from the southern continent, and he looks more Aurelanian, and he's a guest allowed in by the Hearth Mother, who's kind of just like that. She's like their mother and kind of the boss of all of these people, including Sartek. And then we learn that his name is Falcon Anar, and he is a merchant. Hello, Assassin's Blade. And yeah, that's Assassin's Blade, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, you're right.
I always confuse that with like the first book in the
Yep.
series. So he's from Assassin's Blade, we know him. And Falcon asks if Nesrin replaced Chaol Westfall as the captain of the guard. And she says he is now hand to the King Dorian. And Falcon is shocked. And we learn that he's been in the South for 2 years. Yes, he's from Otterlin, and this is just all new information to him. Next, they're at dinner, and the Hearth Mother, she's not there yet at this place, and she won't be there for another day. And Nesryn has a bunch of questions for her. Sartak's flirting there with Nesryn at dinner and says that everyone knew that Nesryn was coming already because he sent word the day before leaving that Nesryn would be going with him. And he was like, It's not weird. I was just really hopeful that you would decide to come with me." I
He
was
knew
like,
she
pretty
would come.
sweet.
They have such a cute like connection. I love it.
Oh yeah. And it gets so much better.
And Nesrin like deserves this. She deserves someone who's like fully into her.
Yeah, because if you remember, I mean, Chaos kind of like dumped her twice.
Hmm.
Like he kind of like dropped her when they had like a little fling. He dropped her for Aelin. Now he's dropping her for Yrene, and she's like, I can't.
Yeah. Gale was, I don't want to say using her, but he was definitely having her on the side.
She was definitely kind of the band-aid a
Hmm.
lot for him.
Yep. So now we get Sartak. Chapter 30, Nesryn is kind of training with Sartak and Borte, and she just kind of shows them her skills with an arrow, like Katniss Everdeen. And then the Hearth Mother, Hulin, returns and reveals that a dark force stirs in the mountains, and she went to look for it. So that's where she's been this whole time. She reveals that rook nests, which, if you remember, the rooks are the birds, basically, they have been destroyed. The eggs and the hatchlings have been stolen. The dark creatures taking them are Karen Kui. Do we remember them? Manon may have picked a fight with them in Air of Fire. The Stygian spiders. This is where things are starting to tie together with all the books. Hulin tells them she knows of Erewhon and the Volg, and that a word gate appeared a long time ago with the Stygian spiders that came from it. Most of the spiders went to Aurelia, but some stayed waiting for the gate to reopen so they could go back to where they came from. War raged in Aurelia, which was the Fey Queen Maeve against three Volg kings. After she defeated the Volg, the Fae came to the mountains to teach the Rooks how to fight the spiders. They built watchtowers across the mountains, and so Hulin tells Sartak to go to the watchtowers and find more answers.
And this chapter, that story is going to be pretty important. And I think there are some discrepancies in this story that we learn later on in the book.
There are, and we
No
will find out.
spoilers. No spoilers for the later half of the book,
Nope.
but
We will find out though, and it is shocking.
literally, my jaw was on the floor. But still, remember this story. It'll come back up. Chapter 31, Nesryn is like, "What are you talking about? Those spiders are a myth." And Falcon also has experience with the spiders because if you remember in Assassin's Blade, we learned that he got years off of his life because of this. So Falcon then starts to pull out all of his spider silk, and he bartered 100 yards of it for years off of his life. Falcon came to the Hearth Mother for answers about the spiders from the north because he's like, I want my youth back. I want to take this deal back. I don't like being old. And so the Hearth Mother wants them all to go punish the spiders for stealing their young rooks and eggs. And they're like, punish them the next time this happens. You know, we need more proof that they're the ones doing this, even though we know, but we're going to punish them next time. So then the Hearth Mom Hulin says that it's happening again and asks if Erewhon has been awoken. So she knows. She's like, they're stirring again. There's something happening. And she asks if Sartak's father knows about Erewhon awakening. And he says bits and pieces, but is overtaken by grief, basically, from his daughter dying. Hulin is their story keeper, and she has a significant amount of knowledge. Later, Hulin sat down and then begins telling kind of her stories. Long before anything that stands today, there was a rip in the world and their mountains, and a word gate opened and closed. And just kind of like Alyssa said, those spiders entered and they're Volg. There's Volg in plain sight, but people don't really know that. That's not really known knowledge. Um, And then, yeah. So Hulin says Nesryn knows how the spiders and Erewhon can be defeated, but she's like, I cannot tell you guys out of fear that Morath is listening, basically. And she is kind of referencing the word case. She's like, I can't tell you. And then Hulin tells them to go to a still standing watchtower, and the Fae left all of these traps in these watchtowers. And so it's going to be a really dangerous track for them. And she tells them not to linger in the tower after dark.
Yeah. So it also makes you wonder, what does Hula know that she's not saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot.
Yeah.
Chapter 32, Yrene and Chaol return to the Tory Library to find more books and scrolls about the Volgan to see how they actually came to the library, because if we remember, some of them came from Ilwe. And Nusha says, I think she's the head librarian, she says they would find answers in the Ascara Oasis, which is a place only the royals have access to. Kale and Yrene go out for a meal, and Yrene says she knows exactly how to get Hussar to invite her to this oasis.
Yeah, so Irene's kind of starting to get into the drama now. She's starting to be like, okay, she Hussar is playing has been playing games with me, so I don't feel bad about playing games with her now. So then in chapter 33, Nesryn and Sartak, they're flying to the watchtower, and while they're flying there, they don't see any webs, they don't see any spiders. And while they're at this kind of tower, they see owls on the outside of the tower, which is a symbol of the Torre. I think that might be important, but I don't know. There are traps and they're looking out for them. And once again, those are meant to kill the spiders. And so, like, they're going like up these stairs, down these stairs. Basically, they're climbing a watchtower. And long story short, they both end up saving each other's life from these spider traps. And then finally, they arrive at the top of the tower and they arrive to a room that has kind of no ceiling. It's just kind of this wide open room. And they see a script on a wall immediately, and it's written in blood. And while they're in there, they find all of these Fey weapons, and they're kind of going over to the script, and they can't read what the script says. And all of a sudden, a voice says, "It says to look up. Pity you didn't."
Ugh, I don't like this.
Uh-huh.
Chapter 34, a spider is right there and tries to eat them. A large gray wolf kind of appears as the spider's trying to get Sartak and Nazarene, and the wolf fights the spider so they can escape. While another spider kind of finds them and chases them, and then Kadara, Sartak's Rook, fights it and kills it. And then we find out that the wolf is Falcon and that he is a shapeshifter and followed them there. Mind
Yeah,
you, we haven't seen a shapeshifter since Lysandra. They're
yeah,
supposed to be super rare.
yeah. And he was injured pretty bad too from this attack with this spider. But yeah, he's followed them there and he saved him. And that's where we stop. But man, I am really liking this book. I think like this book has just really good pacing. And while there's action, I don't know, I thought I liked the action a little bit more in this book, kind of like this slow build, more than kind of some of the action in Empire of Storms. Maybe controversial, but it's just me. I like the mystery that this book has. And I feel like Chaol is now becoming a bit more tolerable. There are definitely scenes where he's really annoying, like the fighting in when he's healing, like when Irene's healing him, like arguing with her. I'm like, dude, just shut up. And I was really bummed at first when the Nesryn and Chaol breakup kind of happened, but I love her with Sartak. I'm like, okay, this is like her equal. This is like the man I feel like she deserves. And a lot of good things are about like not good things, but there's just like in the upcoming chapters, things get like pretty crazy. And her and Sartak, man. It's good.
Yeah, I agree. I liked this book a lot more than I thought I would. It definitely is a little bit slower in like the adventure versus Empire Storms. I feel like Empire Storms is just a lot. It was a lot at once.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was like overload to me a
I
little
feel like
bit.
every chapter was a battle, and every chapter something was going on. Some relationship was happening.
Yeah.
This one, we get a little bit more of a slow build, but I do like all of the different point of views. We get Nesryn, we get Chaol, we get Yrene, but I am really enjoying the lore, the world building. Everything is being tied to different books, different scenes that we had when Aelin met the merchant in Assassin's Blade and got the Stygian square spider silk that saved Sam's life.
Hmm.
Then we meet this guy and he's a shapeshifter,
And
you
more
know?
comes from that, man. I mean, there is just like my like several like plot twists that like you don't see coming that like have my jaw on the floor. And I'm not even done with the book. So I'm just very excited to finish this out.
Yeah. And it was interesting to point out, I didn't know, at least I don't think from previous books, it's been we've read 6 books, so it's a lot of information to remember. But the war was between Maeve and 3 Vogue kings. Interesting.
Hmm.
I feel like that was purposely pointed out, but we'll find out why.
Yeah. Because she had
That
2 sisters.
she did. So I thought it was like all of the Fae Queens against the Vogue Kings,
Yeah.
but I
T.
I don't know. Maybe
Keep
people
reading.
have skewed their versions of the stories from 1,000 years ago. Who knows?
Hmm.
But we
Yeah,
will find out
it's
in the
like playing
next episode.
telephone.
It is like playing telephone, but we're gonna find out.
Hmm.
So that is the end of chapter 2. We'll find out what happens next in chapter episode 3, but to the readers who listen, we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.